in sacred spaces that were able just to speak truth to power, able to set the captives free. And so what other opportunity, what other month than the month of June for us to be able to have this panel discussion as we unpack queer joy, celebrating LGBTQIA plus youth and their families. Listen, I'm so excited about these two individuals that I absolutely love and adore. You meet some folks, and you meet them, and it was a great moment. It was a great time to meet them. But then you meet some folks that they just stick with you. They've got the type of spirit and personality that just lingers. And I'm so excited just to be in the presence of two just great giants that are so admirable in serving and servicing the needs of our community. I'm so excited first about having Reverend Tracy L. Simmons here in the building with us. Although she really needs no introduction, she is doing a great work here in the community. A clinical licensed therapist, is the holding of 2 divinity degrees, and also her own practice as well for family therapy and servicing the LGBTQ community. Such an honor, such a privilege. I won't even just belabor the time with rolling out her whole resume. She is doing a great work, and she is a great work. Amen. And also joining her is, our beloved friend, Madeline, who also simply just goes by the name Maddie. And today is such a special occasion for more than one reasons, right? Not only are we celebrating fathers and happy Father's Day to all of the fathers all across the world, and not only is it Pride Month, but today also happens to be Maddie's 10th Pride coming out anniversary. On today. And so we are so grateful for that. Maddie is a giant, especially in the state of Indiana, where she does her work for Indiana County, and servicing just the needs of marginalized, impoverished youth and children. And so we're so grateful for her and her family as well. She's the best, and we'll just lend a helping hand wherever space she is. I pray that this conversation will be so enlightening, will be so transformative. Those of you that are watching online, we're so grateful to have you. We invite you, please use those comment sections as we move throughout this panel. Tracy and Maddie would love to answer your questions in real time. We will be monitoring the group chat as well, so feel free. Those of you that are also sitting in the space, we also want to make sure that we've got some time to unpack and ask those honest and open questions. So again, I'm excited. Again, this is our second month doing our mental health panel here at Fresh Fire, and I'm excited. Will you just join me in a word of prayer, and we'll dive in? Is that all right? Our Creator, you are the creator of the universe. We thank you for being everything. We thank you for being a God that has no gender. We thank you, God, for your non-binary presence in our lives. That is a mother when we need it. That's a father when we need it. That's a sister, a brother, and a friend. God, all that we have in you. We pray now just for your presence and your power to be a liberator in this space during this discussion. I pray, oh God, that you speak to us through your panelists, Lord, in a way that will equip us, in a way that will engage us, in a way that will empower us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So again, welcome Tracy, welcome Maddie. Listen, it is so good to have you here in the space, We gonna jump in. Y'all ready? Y'all ready to go? I think we got some folk that are watching online and some folk here in the space. They are hungry and eager to hear some truth today. We live in a world where we're showing up, and we have had to adopt and adhere and subscribe to what folks have called truth, and that truth has really been demonized and weaponized against us, particularly those in the LGBTQIA community. And so I don't take your presence here lightly, nor do I take your expertise lightly as well. You both have been in the trenches and have seen some things, have encountered some things, have experienced some things. And so I pray that that this conversation will bring some joy to those communities and those allies as well. So I wanted us to kind of kick off this discussion today with the first portion of our panel as we will tackle queer joy as resistance and what we're calling about healing through celebration. And the focus of that really is centering our joy, our love, and our celebration as sacred acts, here it is, of resistance. Sacred acts of resistance and paths to mental and spiritual flourishing. And so here is the question. I want you to consider your own perspective, your own narrative, your own story, and even how you show up as a faith leader and or faith therapist in your prospective arenas. The first question I want to kick off today is, what does queer joy mean to you, and why is queer joy revolutionary? What does queer joy mean to you, and how is queer joy revolutionary? Maddie?
You know I'm so nervous about this, right?
That's okay. You got this, though, Maddie.
Queer joy to me is I have lived a long life.
That's right.
I have lived a long life of being out or not being out and gone through a lot of those kinds of difficulties. I've had the wonderful opportunity to be a support in the lives of the children in Madison, Indiana, as a youth leader, and that is actually where I met my life. I think queer joy to me is a lot about showing up and being there in the community and being just vocal about it, being open and honest. And I was telling my wife last night, I will give anybody has the chance to dislike me, but they're gonna have to dislike me knowing that I wake up every day and try and make the world a better place and try and make their lives a better place. Because you know I work in foster care and I work with children every single day and families every single day. And if someone's going to look at me and all of the things that make me up and write me off based just on the fact that I have a wife who I love dearly and I have a child that doesn't look like me, then that's their choice. And if they don't want to get to know me, they don't have to. And that's just a lot of freedom in knowing your choice if you like me or not. I'm here.
That's so good. That in itself is revolutionary, isn't it? That we gonna buck kind of the system and the norm, and it's like, listen, I'm gonna be intentional with my presence. Take it or leave it. That's so good. Come on, Doc. What we got? Tracy?
I think my answer to that is unapologetically existing. Okay. So I came into this LGBTQIA kind of life a little later in life, right? So I didn't admit to myself and also admit to the people around me until I was well into my late 30s, early 40s, right? And so the feeling has always been there. I just existed as Tracy. You just didn't know what I was doing. Ain't none of your business who I with, right? It just so happened that I became public with my love, and that kind of changed the game for me. I just needed to exist. Like, I didn't feel like I needed to lie about who I was anymore or lie about who I loved. And so for me, queer joy is just unapologetically existing. I'm not going to apologize for who I love. I'm not going to apologize about their presentation or mine. I'm not apologizing for any of those things. You're going to love us for us. You don't love Tracy for Tracy. You don't love Toya for Toya. You go love whoever that is that you are in love with as a queer person. Love them for who they are, not for what happens in their bedroom. And we tend to forget that queer joy and happiness is past the sexual part of it. It is an intimate, deep relationship, not just intimacy, but only the public, or I would say culture, only sees the sexual side of it. So it's none of your business what I do in my bedroom. You know that I love her and she loves me, and that needs to be the end of it. I don't get into your business all about what's happening behind your closed doors. So queer joy is completely existing unapologetically and not having to ask or answer those questions that we would have for a normal, quote unquote, heterosexual relationship. It's the same thing. It ain't none of your business. It ain't none of your business.
Let the
It
church
ain't.
say
And
amen.
if it's a problem, get to stepping.
Right. It's ain't none of your business. I don't ask you. Why are you asking me? So the same kind of joy and existence I want that you want in your partnership, I want it in mine. Let's keep it cute though.
Let's keep it cute.
Okay.
I love that. Let's keep it cute. Let's keep it cute. I wanna I wanna lean in here a little bit because I consider you both activists. When I think about the work, not that you do, but the work that you've been called to do. The work that you've been called to do in the spaces that you've been called to serve and do that work. My question is this: how can joy and love be forms of activism, especially in the face of oppression?
Go to the book. For God so loved the world
Mm,
that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever, right? So if we are going to talk about love period as a form of resistance, being a believer is resistant. Okay? So let's set the context of, let's go back to Hebrew times, right? And how being a believer or followers of life, because we were not Christians. Let's keep it real. I am a Bible scholar. I'm a Bible scholar. So we were not Christians. We were called followers of the light. And so we were already antithetical to the culture at the time anyway. What makes it different now? What's the difference? Everything about Christianity and the flow of following Jesus was antithetical to the culture. So if that's the case, then queer joy is antithetical to the culture. It makes absolute sense. And so when we expand a little bit more, there's been all different forms of love. We see it all through the Bible. We looking at love between Ruth and Boaz, right? Like understanding that love is not just between a man and a woman; it is universal. So you see these different kind of relationships in the Bible anyway, right? But we won't talk about it being queer for some reason, which I find awfully interesting. But we look at these multiple relationships, like between two men or two women in the Bible, but we won't call it queer. It's still love. So love and joy are universal. Doesn't matter what face is on it. It's in the book. So if that's the case, why do we have to label or put this pressure on love and joy, regardless of who is in love and who the joy is between? It's just love.
just love.
It's just love. That's it.
I have found myself being very emotional about all of the protests that happened yesterday and watching some videos about it. And some of the ones that have really, really hit my heart were ones of children leading these chants, and just the idea of children being the future and giving children that space to learn and grow and find joy in a group of people that isn't there to do anything bad. They're just there to speak their mind. And I've been crying all yesterday afternoon because I'm like, just seeing kiddos chanting and things like that. Just love as a form of resistance is so very important. And I feel like we're seeing it in our world right now because a lot of the protests that I saw yesterday were not fights, were not violence. A lot of it was, I'm here, I love my community, I love my country, I love being who I am with these people and feeling safe. And I feel like a lot of providing that safety and being able to see that is so very important.
Can I tag in really quick? So we talk about queer love as resistance. That also means that violence is the opposite. We talk about opposite of things, right? So if queer love is resistance, that means the opposite of love is hate, and go on comes with hate is a whole bunch of violence. So if we're gonna talk about the violence that's also present in that, I don't think we're really talking about queer and love and joy either, because we have to talk about how it has been a pushback because of that, because it is antithetical to the culture. And so, why is the fact that I am expressing and existing and loving however I love, whoever I love, why is that so violent? Why does that stir so much in culture?
Why is someone feeling so threatened by that?
Correct. Why are you so? Why is there a violent response to the act of love? Right. So that also pushes me to look at what do we define as love in the sense outside of queer joy, and is love violent? So if that's the case, help me understand why is there so much resistance around queer joy and queer love, if that's who we say we're supposed to be. So culturally, we are built on a violent nature, right? and yet and still here we are existing, trying to love and spread joy, and you're still giving me that same violence. I'm not surprised of the pushback of queer joy and queer love, because our society is built on violence, including Christian and pushing of the Christian faith has been built on violence. So it makes sense that there is a push from those who say they love the Lord and are believers and know the word backwards and forwards, but won't talk about the translation of homosexuality in the Bible that changed in 1964. We ain't gonna talk about it. Got it. So, you know what I mean? Like, we're not gonna have those hard conversations to really have the conversation around why queer love and existence is so violent.
That is so good. I had an opportunity to listen to a homily recently in honor of Pride Month from a queer pastor actually serving at Crescent Hill Baptist Church. And he shared a little bit of his story with him and his husband Patrick and their journey, and him being born in this evangelical family, and at a young age knew that he had a call, but there also was this conflict. And so what would you say to queer individuals, particularly queer young people, that are finding their way, that are discovering themselves, but they're showing up in spaces, though, so full of love, right? But the very spaces that they're showing up full of love are the spaces now that they're getting opposition, and they aren't met with love. Instead, they're met with hate. What would you say to that young person trying to find their way in a world, in a space where they're met with the opposite, the opposite of the love piece, that violent, toxic hate? What would you say to him or her, or them?
Keep showing up. I went to Jeffersonville Pride last week, and something that hit me hard in the heart was how many churches were there and were showing up, and were passing out drinks, passing out not only snacks but healthy snacks. One of the churches was passing out grapes and water, and others were doing a blessing for people. And just because of my personal, what I have gone through when I came out, my family was not terribly accepting. I did get the textbook, all of the things that a LGBT person sometimes hears from religious family members. Seeing those churches show up and be in the community and want to know me and my family and the teens and children that I know that maybe haven't been met with that was so just life-changing, honestly. So if kids can keep showing up and churches can keep showing up, eventually you can meet in the middle.
This is a difficult question, if I'm going to be honest, and hard for me to answer. So I'm gonna have to come from different angles. So I'm gonna apologize ahead of time. I'm coming from the angle of being a youth minister. Let me start there. Who over probably 15 years of my life as a youth minister, and had youth in my youth group that identified as queer. One of the things that I had to lean into is the fact that all are welcome. You can't sit here and tell me that all are welcome at the table and you don't include them, okay? And you don't let them have a voice. That doesn't make any sense, right? The table over here says, do this in remembrance of me. And if all are welcome at the table is welcome for all. It is a problem when you say the folks are welcome, but you preach from the pulpit something else. Okay, so I had to take a stance at that time and really be honest and show the love and extension of grace, right, personified in the space where they unfortunately were not getting any grace and any love outside of this space. So if I move forward, right, and dealing with adult life, and also being a person who is youth in the community, what I would say is also not only keep existing, but be unapologetic about it. Like the walk with Christ is not only, we don't want to negate the assembly of the saints, but it's a personal relationship with Him. And so, yes, the saints may be jacked up because we're all sinners saved by grace. There will be a space where you will be accepted and not tolerated. And finding those spaces where you can be accepted and tolerated may be hard. It may be difficult because adults suck. Like, let's keep it real. We are just 12-year-olds in bigger bodies. Y'all got to talk back to me in here. We are literally 12.
Now we have to pay bills.
Yes, and now we have to pay bills. Like, we're 12-year-olds in larger bodies. That's exactly who we are. So I'm looking at a 12-year-old talk to a 10-year-old, like a 40-year-old tell a 12-year-old that they're going to hell when they're really talking to two 12-year-olds. Like, let's just keep it real. And so we have to provide space and understanding and give grace to what it's like being 12 years old in 2025 and who's at 1700 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's a completely different life than being 12 in 1996, being 12 in 1984, being 12 in 2008, right? So they have a different kind of lens and ways of leaning. So you have to lean into them. Tell them, ask them what they need in this space to feel comfortable and be accepted. We want them to be, it is a privilege to be accepted into their world as a young folk. That is a privilege. I don't get to, I don't have to, I get to be a part of the world, right? So we as adults tend to see as they are coming into our world, but it's actually the opposite. So we need to lean into them. What do you need? What does the space need to look like? What it needs to feel like?
What's gonna make you feel safe?
What colors? Thank you. What makes you feel safe? What makes you feel trusted? Like asking them what makes them feel comfortable in our space, because they are coming into us. We're going into theirs. They're not coming into us. It needs to be a mutual kind of conversation. So
There's been a lot of churches that I have gone into, especially since, I have an adopted teenage son. And he wants to be religious. He doesn't feel comfortable going to a church that's going to tell him that his two moms are doing something wrong by loving each other and loving him. And every time I've stepped into a church, until today, because this is going great, I have felt like that little 16, 17-year-old that's going, this is who I am, will you please love me? Yes. And so many times I've been met with, because you have a wife, because you have a son that doesn't look like you, because your family isn't what we expect a family to be, you aren't welcome here. Or your son is welcome here, but you and your wife, maybe not. And that makes it tough because I want him to have his own ideas and thoughts and feelings on things, but I'm still his mom. I still gotta make sure if he's gonna walk into some place, he's gonna feel safe. And that it's a whole nother thing now that he's a part of it.
that is so scary, the fact we have to talk about safety in church.
Yeah.
Like that is the epitome of a real big fear. The fact that not only physically we need to talk about safety in church, hello, all the shootings, right? But the fact I have to talk about emotional safety in a space where all are welcome. And this is a hospital where sick people come to get well, but I can't even feel safe or vulnerable in this space where people are supposed to be congregating together to live this thing called life. That's insane to me.
I sat through a sermon about 2 months ago because my son had said, hey, I want to go to church. And I haven't attended church since I came out, really, because, getting all cool. Because it just felt like a scary thing to me. And I sat through an entire sermon at the church near our home, went up, introduced myself to the pastor, and I said, hi, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then we're going to decide if it's safe if my son comes here. And as soon as I said, I have a wife, he said, yeah, we're going to teach your son that that's not okay. And I went, cool, then he's not coming here. Because preaching hate is just never a place, never a thing to do, never a place to find yourself. And I can't stand for that kind of thing.
And if we want to be honest,
put my kid in there saying, that's fine, you can learn about that and learn that I'm not a good person.
I love the fact you're open with it, because if we put a video in some of these homes and really see what people really go on, it may be a different conversation that happens in these churches.
I've been reconciling with a lot of things that I went through as a child now that I have a child. And I don't know that I've told you this, but he came, my wife and I fostered for 2 years, and he came to my home as a, hey, can you let this kid sleep here for the night? We'll pick him up tomorrow. And he never left. And so we weren't ready for the learning the curly hair, learning the skin routine. And we hit the ground running, and I'm still running. But I'm getting better at it.
And I think too, Maddie, even kudos to you for modeling just a place of refuge and safety even for him, that he's able to see that we won't just subscribe to a place because there's a cross out front. Like we will vet this, we will test this,
And we'll talk about it.
and we will
We're
talk
gonna
about
talk
it.
it through.
Yeah,
If you feel safe here, you feel safe here. And I will take you every dang Sunday.
yeah.
But if it's a place that you aren't going to be able to feel safe, then they don't deserve to have you there.
Yeah, their loss. Their loss,
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm living my life a lot more with that's their loss.
I hear that. I hear that. I wanna maybe move into, if you will, maybe each of you share even just a little bit, not necessarily about your story and testimony, but a little bit more poignantly about how you have found joy on your own journeys. Tracy, I know that you shared moments ago that your journey, particularly this journey, was a little bit of, I guess, a late bloomer in life, and then kind of for you, Maddie, even just kind of navigating that as well. I have, again, had the privilege to even see you guys outside of here in spaces. And so I know how evident and how intentional and how genuine and authentic the love and joy that you both even possess. If you will even just share with those that are watching, how joy is even shown up for you, how you have even modeled that, even in your own journey. Before you answer that, like in my house, so Teddy, he's got a little joy movement, right? And his joy movement is like so hood, it is so ratchet, but that's his joy movement, right? That's it. That's right. That's it. And so, like, his joy movement is dance, so it's moving specifically like twerking, and
I love that.
yes, but he is so intentional and so unapologetic about that just being a place of joy for him. So if you can just speak to the queer saints, right? Particularly just about your own journey and how you have not been oppressed by things that have oppressed you, but you have found liberation and freedom. Most importantly, joy.
You want to go first?
I'll
Lynn?
go first. I think joy had to come find me. Because I don't think I was intentionally looking for that joy. I think other folks saw the joy in me before I was able to find it in myself. And I mean, experimenting, quote unquote, if we want to say that, right, of what that could look like for me. And I've broken some hearts. I've hurt some folk in the process of finding my own joy. If I'm going to be honest about that, I have. And that is me not knowing who I was, not knowing what I wanted to be, not who I wanted to be with, right? Not really comfortable about saying that I'm a lesbian and I'm in a relationship with another woman, or if their presentation wasn't to my liking. I'm so sorry, and I hope you know who I am, who I'm talking to. There's been a journey to that joy, right? It had to find me, and so when it finally found me, I think I freed myself. So the joy actually came from my friends. Like, my friends knew. They knew before I knew. And so when I said it, they were like, duh, right? Like, we knew you were a lesbian a long time ago. We knew at the bare minimum, one of my best friends said this. At the bare minimum, we knew you were bisexual, Tracy.
The people that love you always seem
Right, they seem
feels
to
like they're
know.
Like, and yeah,
Twin. Who yeah, at the bare minimum, we knew you were bisexual, Tracy. And so I had to, I accepted their love. And then the last piece of my joy finding me was me sharing with my father, which is crazy. It's Father's Day. Telling my father released me to really find my own joy and really dig into it. And it took me almost 3 or 4 relationships to get to that point. So when I shared with my dad, that wasn't my roommate, that was really my girlfriend. and hearing his response freed me to lean into my joy. Joy's naturally here. If you know me, you know I'm a fool, right? So I'm naturally that anyway. But that intimate joy was different. It was a way for me healing my heart and leaning into the hurt of relationships before. And so having joy find me and then sharing this joy feels right. It feels normal. Joy found me. I wasn't looking for it. It found me. That's true.
I think in an opposite way, I have sought out joy. I have moved from places that no longer serve me in my heart. In college, this is a little emotional for me, but in college, I was in a sorority, and my very best friend I met through that sorority. We were roommates, and about 6 months into us living together, he came out to me as trans. And we did a little search on the internet, and our sorority, though we both felt safe and comfortable there, Nationals was not willing to allow him to remain in the sorority. And I bit the bullet, and I was the one that sent the email that said, hey, can this be okay? And they threatened me with just like moving from the sorority if I didn't tell them who it was. And I said, screw it, bye. I'm out, he's out, we're done. And that has continued to be, it was one of the hardest things that I've done. Having to be in opposition with people that you love and care for and that you feel safe with is so difficult. But when it comes to me and my friend Ripley are still best friends. I was in his wedding, he was in mine. And seeking out that joy and going, I know this area, this part of my life is no longer serving me emotionally, physically, mentally, in any way that is making my life better, and feeling that you can move on from that, that has been the best way to seek joy for me. I've done that with the sorority that I was in. I have done that with relationships. My wife and I moved in together 2 months before we started fostering, and our son came to us 6 months later. And that was only because we decided to start fostering and decided to say, well, we're doing real good. We're together forever. How can we make the world a better place together as a unit? And over 2 years, we had 50 kids. And just continuing to say yes and continue to put yourself out there, even when it's scary, even when it's a huge change, has always brought joy to me. And actually, tomorrow we get a 15-year-old boy. Yeah, and we're very, very excited about it. We're a little nervous because we haven't fostered in a while, but we're very excited to be able to provide something that's safe and home and calm, somewhere that feels like safety and love to another kid.
Yeah, that is beautiful, and congratulations on that.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. I want to kind of round out this portion of our discussion, because this is a sacred space that we're in. We are physically, literally in a church space, and so we're so grateful for this inclusive space that we get to worship. But to both of you all's point, the church has not always modeled what joy and love and acceptance ought to look like. There are churches that don't even do a good job of even modeling what tolerance ought to even look like. And so I want you both just to shed a little bit of light on what role should the church be playing in cultivating joy for LGBTQ plus people? What role should the church be playing in cultivating joy for LGBTQ plus people?
I said keep showing up earlier. I just continuing to show up, continuing to affirm and reaffirm those in your community. I don't feel that I have a good answer for this. My answer for everything is keep showing up. Keep pushing when it's hard. Keep making sure people feel comfortable and feel safe. Just because they're there, that doesn't mean that they know. So saying this is a safe place. How can I make you feel safe? How can I help you with that? How can I lift you up, make you better, help you not change you, but help you, meet you where you are, and make both of our lives better.
I love that. I love that, Maddie. And before you answer, Tracy, I think, Maddie, you're spot on. So often we drive down, we got churches on every corner nowadays, right? They've got the marquee out in the front, and I don't know how many times I've read on the front of churches where it says, "Come as you are," where it says, "All are welcome here." And the truth of the matter is, depending on the church you go into, you can come as you are, but they won't let you stay
They
that
won't
way.
take you as you
That's
are.
it. That's
They'll
it.
let you stay.
That's it. We gonna pray whatever out. We gonna lay whatever hands to get it up out of here. And so the goal that you both just talked about isn't just tolerance but acceptance. Tracy.
I think for the church is stop being performative. I'm gonna go around about, but I'm coming back. I go into churches now, and I think I'm in at the Palace and not the church. The feel of it's concert and entertainment versus transformative, right? The church should be a transformative place. It's not just a place where we go and worship and throw our hands up and all that other good stuff. It should be a space of transformation. But now it's become performative. And so now we're coming in here to perform and not really lean into the relationships between the people. Let me make the mark of the cross, right? Because that's what the cross is. The cross is a relationship here and the relationship here. And so we forget what this relationship looks like, and it becomes performative, right? It's real cute to ask someone to come into the church and to be a part of the church. But when it looks like, where are the boots on the ground? Who's in your pulpit? Who's in your leadership? Who's on your website? Who's on your materials?
When you have a struggle, who's going to help you?
Hello.
Who's going to have your back?
Hello.
Who's going to show up?
Hello.
And
Hello.
keep showing up.
What is that? What does really living in community look like? So my first charge is to stop being performative and be transformative. So if we're going to transform, then really transform. That means you have to transform too. So it means open up spaces, having hard conversations, talking about mental health, talking about queerness, talking about all those things that are taboo outside of here, because it's in the book too, just in case you didn't know. It's there too. So if that's the case, and this is the book that we use for context of how we live to our life, then the context of our life includes us. The Bible is not exclusive. It is inclusive. So we're going to be included in that. Those conversations need to include us too. So kill the performity and actually invite folks, not only asking how to come in, all are welcome, right? But what does it mean for you to be welcome and stay welcomed, right? You can put the table out, don't mean I want to put my dirty feet underneath it. I need to make sure this is a table where I want to eat. So the food needs to be good. It not only does it need to look good, the food needs to be good. So what I'm eating on, what I'm munching on as a Christian, what are you feeding me and feeding my spirit and my soul has to be something I want to intake. So that also means we got to look at what we're teaching, what we're preaching,
And you
how
have to
we
respect
preaching.
those boundaries.
Yes.
What's a no-go?
Yeah.
You were talking about food. I remembered I had allergies.
Yes.
And I'm like, what does a spiritual allergy have? Telling me that I'm not a good person
Hello.
just because I have a wife.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a no-go.
Yeah.
I'm not here anymore if
Yeah.
you're telling me that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're meeting me where I am and talking to me about it, heck yeah, I'll come
Yeah,
back.
we can't be contradictory and say that the Bible and Christ is for everybody and don't include everybody. Like, we ain't doing that. So, no, there needs to be some examination of how we do those things to not only welcome folks in, but keep folks here.
That's so good. And not only being mindful about what is served, but even making sure that what's served is nourishing. Yeah, like
That's a whole bunch of foolishness out here.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if you don't have a spiritual ear, you just thinking like, again, the Bible tells us about those who are doing the tickling of the ears. Come on, scholars in here. And so there's a difference between being nourished and being entertained in these spaces. And it does also tell us study to show thyself approved, which also means that your spiritual ear needs to be open, but you also got to be honest about your spiritual ear too. Like, it's okay to have someone who is a Bible scholar, been reading for 50 years, and someone who just got out the club and walked in here at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's okay to have that, right? And it's okay to teach in a way where everybody can eat. The one that's been here for 50 years and the one who's just knowing God.
How'd you know I was at the club before that?
So it's okay to have that. You need to have that in the room, right? So it again, it's stop with the the superficialness of it and really begin to look at how you transform people, how you transform life, how you transform love into an action, not just something we talk about. It requires us. It is an ing, loving, not loved, past tense. It is a continuation, and that love should look different for every church or every person you encounter. Shouldn't be the same.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As we move into kind of the second portion of our discussion, which is supporting LGBTQ plus youth, their families, and creating spaces of belonging. And Tracy, you kind of touched up on this in the first part of our discussion that we rolled out moments ago, where you had mentioned the importance of us as adults not being so quick to demand what it is that what we need from youth, but rather taking just a moment of intentionality about creating a space to hear what it is that they need from us. And so that being said, I want to know from both of you all who work in the field of just young people and particularly kind of navigating spaces of mental health awareness for folks, what do LGBTQ plus youth need most from adults and or faith communities?
They need people that don't just talk to talk, people that talk to learn and listen and give them the chance to say, well, this is what I think about this, and help them grow instead of just saying, well, no, this is not right. That's not how you're supposed to do that. That's not how you're supposed to think about that. We've had a lot of kids in our home that they've come in and said, like, I don't feel safe in this situation or that situation, and just saying, oh, well, no, sorry, we go to church. You're going to go to church with us. I've never seen that end up well. I've only seen it be, well, now I don't want to be here. I've seen a lot of situations where we've had to step back and say, okay, you're not comfortable here. You're being vocal about that. What can we do? How can we understand what your needs are, what the things you've gone through are, and meet you where you're at instead of expecting you to run and catch up to us? We've just had a lot of kids in our home that have had a lot of different needs, and going in with a cookie cutter, one size fits all is never the way to deal with a single person, let alone multiple people of different backgrounds, different traumas, different things that they've gone through. So just meeting each kid, each teen, each young adult where they are, I can't think of doing it any other way.
It's the same thing that we need. We want to be seen and want to be heard and understood. It's the same thing. Like, we're not asking them anything else we don't want as an adult. Is someone for us to be seen and for us to be heard. That's it. That's literally the simplest thing. And the other part of that is this is not authoritarianism. This is a partnership. This should be democratic, right? Like, it should be an ebb and flow of conversation back and forth. There are certain things we absolutely have to do. I get that, right? And it maintains order. There needs to be structures and systems. I'm not bucking that part of it. I understand that part. However, there is a way that younger individuals approach life and see things. They are our biggest critics, and they should be, because they're on the outside looking in, so they can see things that we can't. And so open and finding a space for them to be open and honest and share back feedback should be actually welcomed. You want to get better, don't you? One of the things about having a job and getting that raise is a job performance review, right? Why is the church not open to that? Crickets. Why are we not open to that, right? If any other space and place we ask for feedback, we get it. What makes it different than in the church? So it's okay to have that conversation, that dialogue about what's good, bad, ugly, and indifferent, and welcome that. But in this space, unfortunately, it is a pushback, like, you got to roll with us. No, I don't, Bill. I don't. And that's the reason why we don't see them in our churches. Hello. That's the reason why they're not here, because they're not seen and heard. Their feedback is not being put into place, right? And so we need to check ourselves with that. It's okay to lay it out. Yes, we got to do certain things, but baby, the voice of the youth has always been here. You put them up on Fifth Sunday, Right. So why can't they be integrated into the house the system runs? That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand that. But it's also I also was raised in that, so that's probably the reason why I'm like it doesn't make sense for them not to be a part of the system because I was a part of the system growing up.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Tracy. I'm like an 80s baby, and I remember many times my mom taking me in spaces and would give me like the whole talk that
Yep.
stay in a child's place, right? I don't know how many times I heard growing up that children are to be seen and not heard. And so at a young age, it taught me like the it taught me the commodity of being voiceless. It taught me the power of not having a voice, of not speaking up, of not stepping in. I wanna take this a little bit farther because then how do you begin to do the work of breaking through to young people that may or may not even have the words to articulate what they feel and what's going on? I know, we encounter young people and oftentimes you ask and you get the shrug or you'll just get the answer that's going to be the most of least resistance is just the nod and the yes. But we're talking about some real issues with real young people that are going through things that it looks a whole lot different than it did in 88 and 98 and 2008 and even 2018. And so how do we navigate through that as faith leaders, as advocates, as allies, as parents, as therapists, even when young people may or may not even feel safe enough or may not even have the words to adequately articulate what it is that they feel in need.
Just like you can seek out joy, you can seek out knowledge. I didn't start my life knowing everything. I still don't know everything. No way. But I have spent a lot of time in fostering, in working in this field, saying, I don't know that. I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn about that. I'm going to read about it. I'm going to watch movies. I'm going to ask people. My kiddo is African American. He came to us bald as the day he was born. I had to learn that whole routine, and I'm not just going to read a book about that. I'm watching videos. I'm talking to friends. I'm taking him. We're trying this and that and the other barbershop. And it's the same way with any other thing. You got to step out of your comfort zone, and you got to take the time to learn. Even if nobody's going to be able to tell you, hey, this is what I need. Paying attention and saying, I may not know what you need, but I'm going to learn how to meet you where you are, and we can figure it out together. Not just nod, yeah, you don't need anything, okay, we're good then. Saying, no, I see that you need something. I see that you need the help, and you need that support and love, and I'm going to learn how to be that person for you and love you in the way that you need.
Love it. That's beautiful. I know. So my coming out story was a little bit different in that, like, I was grown, and I think that there was a lot of fear and intentionality woven into that. My father is a Vietnam veteran, and so I was really unsure as to how this whole thing would
You
kind
in that
of.
conversation, you're like, I
That's
think I
right.
know how this is going to go.
That's
and I don't
right.
know about
That's
that.
right.
Listen,
That's
I'm
right.
a preacher's kid, so
Yeah.
yeah,
So you get it. You get
yeah,
it.
I get it.
My mom's a teacher.
Same. Yep. And so I was really intentional about waiting until I was at a place that I could provide for myself. That was the idea for me. Let me make sure I'm making my own money. Let me make sure I'm providing for myself. I'm paying my own bills. Like, I'm not needing to call mom or dad for anything because I don't know how this is going to go. Thankfully, I've been nothing but a recipient of their love from my entire family. But the truth is, like, that's not everybody's story. As a faith leader, I have heard more horror stories than I have like my own, where folks have been young teenagers and have come out to their parents and have been thrown out all in the same night, in the middle of the night. And so I want to ask this question, which is a two-part question for you both, Maddie and Tracy. What are some of the mental health risks that teens face, and what can we do as adults to protect them? A lot of even the human trafficking that we're seeing is as a result of young people not being protected. Thankfully, our community was able to create spaces like the drag community and the underground like dance hall with voguing, where folks were able to find a community that they could fit in and be accepted. But what about in mainstream urban cities? They don't have that. You know, what are some of the mental health issues that teens face, and what can we do as adults to protect them?
From the mental health side, it is I'll start with the worst and work my way to the best. Is that better? Is losing their life. The numbers have skyrocketed since COVID of teenagers unaliving themselves, right, and not finding spaces to be heard and feel safe. There's PTSD, there's anxiety, there's depression, there's self harm, there's bipolar, there is, BPD. There's tons of diagnoses that we can throw out there, right? But at the end of the day, it's literally being forced into a space where you have to conform, and you're not meant to conform into that space, right? And so those kind of disassociations, in essence, right? I have to get out of my head in order to survive, right? I have to disconnect my emotions from my body in order to live every
Or
day.
I have to run. I have to get away.
Yes, all that.
I've
All
seen
that.
a lot of kids that have come into the system.
Yeah.
They weren't accepted.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
their parents just didn't pick them up.
Yeah.
They had to go to a
Wherever.
mental health facility.
Yeah.
Or I've had a lot of trans kids in my home. My wife is trans.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as they found out, they were like, "You can have every one of them. We'll put them in your house one after the other." And it's so hard.
It's just the breaking of the human spirit. In charismatic churches, we in full embodiment of the Holy Spirit, right? There's a whole bunch of speaking in tongues and shouting, etc. It is a whole body experience in the worship experience. Imagine having to detach that from yourself, of a connection of wholeness and body and spirit of self in order just to survive every day. And do that at 12, 14, 8, with two individuals in the home with you, or multiple, or the community around you that tells you that what you believe and what you think about yourself is incorrect. It's just a phase you're going through. You'll get back to loving blue. It's okay, right? It's just a Barbie doll. It's just a phase for right now, and not really listening, hearing, and not honoring what is coming from this young person, right? And really listening to what they are saying to them. It may not be a phase. It may be, but it may not be. Can you take it
But
for
people are
face
allowed to
value?
learn.
Yes,
And you're allowed to go through phases.
you are. That's a part of life. And so just being able to find finding a safe place mentally, physically, emotionally to be is important. And it is difficult to find spaces when folks don't understand, because it's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a side note, because I want to be sassy. Thank you, heterosexuals, because in order for us to get here, somebody got to have sex. So that means that heterosexual homes produce homosexual people. Hello? So help me. You see what I'm saying? Like, we have it all these, but we're not talking about the real. In order for us to get here, outside of a medical, right, where we're doing test tube baby stuff, right? But the truth of the matter is, we come out of heterosexual homes. Am I correct? Hello? So we're not talking about what's happening in those homes. We're not going to have a conversation about what's happening in the homes that we seem as normal.
And let me even take it a step further, Tracy, because a lot of us aren't even coming out of heterosexual homes. Let's be clear, a lot of us are coming simply out of heterosexual encounters.
Well, I mean, yeah.
And so even kind of fundamentally, right, we're a little bit already just disadvantaged, because what home for many of us?
that it's a place where I lay my head
Right.
doesn't mean it's a home
Right.
or a
Yeah.
functioning
Yeah.
family, right? Or
Yeah.
a functioning individual. I say functioning in quotations, individuals that are producing a happy home to engage with.
So
you are
good.
correct.
Yeah.
And so, but we won't have those. You
That's
talk
it.
about the kids and what they decide to love, but we're gonna talk about what. Okay, got it. Then
Yeah.
just
That-
talk about the result.
That's too much work.
I mean-
that's too much work.
That's too much.
Yeah,
Shut
that's
up.
too
Who
much.
wants to do that?
I want to, this is so good. I want to talk a little bit really quick, even just about the church and what the church and even school. So educational in the world of academia. So, educational institutions of higher learning and all of those other kind of sorts of things. At the core of the church is the Bible. Right? And so we've got scriptures in the Bible like Psalm 139, which talks about being fearfully and wonderfully made, doesn't it? Right? We've got scriptures like 1 John 4:7, which says, let us love one another, for God is love. Love comes from God. And so at the helm of our faith, at the helm of the church, is the sacred text that we stand on. My question then now is, how can churches and schools truly become affirming spaces? If these are the words that we practice and live out of and believe and uphold, right? As the ultimate authority, as the governing authority for the way that we live our lives is the word. How do churches and schools truly become places that live out what it means to affirm young people that they're fearfully and wonderfully made? God did not make a mistake. You were fearfully, intentionally made just who you are as you are. How do we truly affirm that in sacred spaces, in schools, and in church as well?
I'm about to make some folk mad.
At least you warned them.
Culturally, for Western culture, we live in a very individualistic society versus a collective society. And because we lean into the individual, it makes sense that there is space and a push for those to be exercised out of the common space versus included in the space. Church is not excluded in that conversation. So as much as we say that it is inclusive and we are a community, the truth of the matter is we are not. That's why I said I'm about to make some folks mad. Because the truth of the matter is we think that because we come into this church house and we are part of this community and family, does not mean we are also individuals within that community and don't have an individual mindset. The Bible says we cannot learn through the preacher, right? So there's an individual here that is teaching the scriptures to the people. However, it is also your individual goal to learn the scriptures for yourself. So study to show thyself approved. If you study the scriptures, you will see it's communal and not individual. But we live in an outer society that tells us that individualism above communality is the problem. So until we deal with that, we will continue to have this conversation. Because community ain't real. It's fake. We fronting. Performative. And so until we really deal with the fact that we want to really build a community, it takes work. It takes blood, sweat, tears, hard conversations, difficult spaces. It takes making mistakes. It takes creating space for us to create resistance and acceptance all at the same time. It takes some hard stuff. And until we as a collective as a body of Christ, really want to deal with how we've created and tortured and twisted and made it so individualistic, we're going to still have these conversations 50 years from now. Just as well as we are still reading the old ancient text that's over 2,000 years old that we are applying to our daily life that has some issues and some concerns with it, right? Like, we just got to be honest about that. And until we deal with the realness of that, we don't still have these conversations. And I'm not one of those preachers that ain't going to sit here and talk about it. We going to deal with it, shouty. Like, we going to bring it in the room. We going to unpack it. You going to have to get mad. I don't care. You going to have to wrestle with it in your spirit. Wrestle with it. Get uncomfortable. Because change does not come from us being cute. How do clothes get clean?
Washing them.
What's in the middle of a washer? Agitator. In order to get the dirt out, you got to be agitated. The beautiful things of a pearl, I'm a June baby, Gemini's in the house. So the beautiful thing about oyster is that how a pearl is made is that sand gets in the oyster, and the secretions from the oyster coat the grain of sand. It's out of irritating that a beautiful piece of jewelry comes. So if the church is going to have to grow, we got to get ugly. We have to get irritated. We're going to have to be pushed. We're going to have to be challenged so that we don't have this conversation no more. I don't want to be talking about this in 2045. I don't want to be talking about this in 2075. Give me a new problem. Give me a new reason. Like, give me a reason that I can't have that. The church is so huge or a place is so huge that we actually don't even forget the building. Let's take it to the streets, right? I want those problems. I don't want these problems. Does that make sense? I don't want these problems.
Girl, you said about everything I could have said. A million times better than I could have said it. I'm just worried you're going to fist fight somebody. And I really don't want you to do that.
I don't care. We can have these conversations. I'm all right with it. But we need to. We need to have these really challenging conversations about the body. We do.
That is so good. So good. What final kind of thought and question, folks that are watching online, even folks in the space, if you've had any questions that have come up just in your mind and your spirit, I encourage you now while we still have our panelists here, encourage you maybe just to kind of be kind of ruminating over those questions. I did have one final question for each of you. When we talk about just our young people, when we talk about just our queer folks, what resources do you wish were offered to LGBTQ plus youth and their families? What would be the greatest benefit, the greatest reward for young folks navigating queer spaces?
I'm a big proponent of therapy. My kiddo's in therapy to go through all of the trauma that any foster child faces, even if they've landed in a home, stayed there. There's always wounds from trauma. Therapy, I'm a big supporter of that. Family therapy, even. If you need someone that's unbiased, that's going to talk you and your family through what you're going through, what's going on in life, I don't see how that could possibly be a bad thing.
Change the conversations at the dinner table, or in front of the TV, or with whatever that looks like, right? So the majority of our molding and shaping happens within the home. Even before we get here on Sundays, right? It happens. You're literally here only for 4 hours a week. Like, let's keep it real. Unless, like old school where you got Wednesday night Bible study, all the other stuff, right? But the truth of the matter is the majority of time and people we engage with are in our own home. What are we talking about at those dinner tables? What are the topics that we're discussing? What are some things that we're bringing up, right? That lays the vulnerability, the openness, the caring, the loving space for those individuals, for those children in your home, for their friends, for whoever, right? To be able to bring those things into your home and talk about them. Because when we don't talk about them at the dinner table, they talk about them on the bus. They talk about them on Instagram. They make videos on TikTok. They talking about it. Like, let's just keep it real. They're talking about it. The question is, why they're not talking to you about it? And so it is, how do we create and foster that space to have those open conversations? We got to change what happens at the dinner table. I wish there were different conversations I had with my parents when I was growing up, right? I wish it was open conversation around sex and sexuality. I had those conversations with my friends, or I had them at church, because the person that was playing the piano, all right, the person on the organ, all right, the person that was my choir director, all right, with the husband sitting on the front pew in the chinchilla coat on January, right? You know what I'm saying? Like in the 80s, like it's happening, but it's not happening in my home. And that I wish I had a space that I could do that with my parents. I had to create spaces to have those conversations. I don't want it to, it shouldn't be fostered. It should just be natural. And so I had people in my life growing up particular my cousin and other folks in my life who allowed me to have those conversations with them. Was it uncomfortable? Absolutely. Do I now foster that for my babies that I love? Absolutely. I don't care what it is. I'm gonna fuss. That's just who I am. Right, I'm a fuss, but I'm gonna love you through it. I just want to know how we can support. So change the conversation at the dinner table. Like, what are y'all talking about? And make it comfortable for folks to speak.
That's something we've been learning a lot to do because as a 25, 26-year-old, we suddenly had a teenager in our home. And I've mentioned about trauma. One of his biggest difficulties is at any minor convenience, he's like, oh God, they're gonna be so mad at me. I'm not gonna be mad at you. He'll break something and he'll go, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm not mad at you. I love you beyond anything else. My heart is full of love for you. And that's where we're gonna meet each other and we're gonna talk about it. And that may not ever be a thing that goes away, that fear that he has, because the first 12 years of his life, it was, I didn't make this thing well enough. I didn't get good enough grades. I didn't do enough. And I don't have anyone pushing me, helping me, teaching me how to be who and where I want to be. He may always go through that, but I'm always gonna meet with him with, I love you, and I'm always gonna love you. And no matter what we go through, you're gonna be able to come home, and this is a place that you can talk to me about anything.
Can I bring something up you said earlier? You had mentioned that, we come from families or culture that says kids are to be seen and not heard, right? Or, what happens in this house stays in this house. Those kind of cultural phenomenons, black culture phenomenons, if I want to be specific, was fostered out of safety, okay? That safety comes from slavery, because if you told someone that you actually married, they would break up the home, right? Kids naturally talk and tell everything, right? So to keep them quiet, we created cultures so they wouldn't speak and tell our business, because when our business goes outside of our home, we get hurt. Here is the 2025 implication of that, right? We now have children, and some of us in the room are those children, where we don't know how to speak up. We don't know what avocation looks like. We don't know what it means to speak for ourselves and say, this is what I need, but we will show it in behavior. We will be angry and fight. We will cuss somebody out. We'll roll a blunt and grab a bottle because we can't, the words and the emotions are here, but we just can't get it out. I say that to caution us, as even though that's the background of our culture, how harmful it is in real life. This is how we get to this point where we're having conversation about what young folk or young queer folk need. It's because we're still living under those standards, under that culture of silence. And that silence is harmful. It's not helpful. So we have to parse out the duality of that. Yeah, I don't want you telling all my business in these streets, right? However, if something's going on, I still need you to speak. We need to be able to say that and express that clearly so that our children understand it, and they don't only get the message that your silence is what I want from you. We need to be able to live in that duality and be able to share that too. That's how we get here.
That is rich. This entire dialogue has been an absolutely enriching experience. We've got some questions. Just one, okay. And so while we're still trying to find the question, let me first just a few final thoughts. Let me first just thank you both, Reverend Tracy, Maddie, for just your time, for your attentiveness, for you sharing just your treasure, your talent, and your time with us. We're so grateful, and I think we've got that question. Yeah. Okay. Yep. And so, Tracy, let me just recap that for folks that are watching online so that they all can hear the question. So the question is, how does an individual navigate, particularly a church setting, being in church, identifying as a queer individual when scripture is being used kind of to weaponize or being used against them?
You ain't reading the Bible. Because the Ethiopian eunuch is a perfect example of queer identity. He was castrated. He was. But they also sent him out to the front line. You think they just washing clothes? He's just making sure they got their uniforms together. He just making sure they got bottled water while they're on the front line. Stop playing. Stop playing. So let's have a conversation around Ruth and Naomi, right? Let's look at some of those other relationships in the Bible from a different lens. We're not being honest. And I think when we talk about navigating those spaces, I'm a challenger. If you haven't figured it out yet, I live my life by the challenge. To challenge thought, to challenge ideas, to challenge spaces. I'm a table shaker. I'm coming in and kicking the table over. That's just who I am. And so I approach that from that conversation of challenge the narrative of who's to say that we're not in the Bible. And then have a deeper conversation around other relationships in the Bible that we have deemed as normal from a different lens. It's all about perspective anyway. There's 85,400 versions of the Bible. Can we keep it all the way gangster? And so if that is the case, then every version of the Bible is going to have these individuals pictured or perspective in a different way. Like that's just the verse, that's just the way it is. So let's have a conversation. So can we discuss the Ethiopian eunuch as someone who is actually trans in the Bible and not by choice? By force. So let's have that conversation. So how would you identify that person in the Bible? How would you identify the relationship between Ruth and Naomi? Let's talk about it. Is that like big sister, little sister? How would we talk about it? You lay the context if it was intimate. They had an intimate relationship, correct? They just weren't sexual. So would that be a lesbian relationship because there's no intimacy? Let's talk about it. So to challenge that thought, right, would be my approach, how you navigate the challenges. You got the book. It's in the book. I'm not out of text. I'm not out of the text. I'm in the text. So if that's the case, challenge it.
Yeah.
We won't sit in space and actually, because it feels like blasphemous, because that's where I come from. To challenge the text is blasphemous. No, the text talks back to us every day. We talk to it and it talks to us. So challenge it.
I know for me, I want to say this really quick in about 30, 60 seconds. For me, I got to a point that I was sick of folk telling me what these scriptures meant that were in direct conflict to my call and who I had been created to be. I then discovered that a lot of text that we read and our understanding of it has been clobbered, meaning they have taken this and have completely twisted and turned it into something completely different. But context is everything. And so when we're reading these scriptures, it's important to understand what was going on then. It was important to understand even some of the commandments and statutes that were put in place were no different than it was just to protect kind of laws today. And so just understanding context is everything. So I would encourage individuals not only to get in your word, but even just to dig a little bit deeper. I promise you, you will find yourself in the word just as you are, the way God made you. That has been one of the most free and liberating things for me when I could read the story of Sodom and Gomorrah
differently
and not be offended and not feel as if, listen, that was some way in direct kind of relation to who I have been created to be. So again, like context is everything. Context is everything.
Add one thing to it and I'm done. So we are also talking about a text that the original text was Aramaic, then moved to Hebrew, then translated into Greek. There is tons of things that are lost in all those translations from the original text to what we have now, right? And so that's problematic within itself. And then we got to talk about whose hands have been on it. The canonization of the Bible, the version of the Bible, all that stuff. All that goes into these conversations, and we don't talk about it.
I love how conservative churches love the King James version of the Bible. They live by the King James version, but
won't talk about who King James is.
Can we help some folk in here tonight? Can we talk about who King James was?
Thank you.
Can we talk about his queerness?
Thank you.
Can we talk about who translated the King James version into King James?
Thank you.
Was a queer man. And so again, context is everything. We had one more question.
Speaking truth.
So again, folks that are watching, while y'all pontificate over here, uh, for folks that are watching, the question was, how do you have community in community when you haven't always felt or saw yourself in the community that you serve in or presently in, how you still show up as an individual in a community that may or may not always be open and embracing and affirming to you within the community?
I mean, that's a hard question. And that's mm, a piece of me. A piece of me wants to say that we have to embrace all of it, right? Because we also living in a very digital world, right? Shout out to Erica Badu, a digital world and a digital girl, right? And so there is still community even in that individualism that's here. And so do we embrace that in the church? Right, and bring in that very digital way of engaging with each other, because that's a part of everyday culture anyway, right? So we have a history of changing with the times. Why don't we still change with what's happening now? So can we still be an individual and in the community? Yeah, I just think we need to think outside the box and embrace what's already here, right? Like, let's be honest, we have majority of people that watch church now from Bedside Baptist. They coming into the actual church house. That doesn't mean they're not a part of the community. That just means they're not in space. So we just have to think differently about how we talk about, how we create. What does that look like? It may be digital now, and that is also, we also have to take a hit from that too, right? From not having that individual connection, energy exchange. We're in spaces with each other. We just have to, maybe we need to think about what community looks like. Still have it, just approach the definition differently. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I was going to say I can't speak about blackness, wonder why. But I can speak about learning and showing up. Our son, as I mentioned, is African American, and that was doesn't look like me, doesn't have hair like me, and that's always been a learning experience. And just being open to the learning and continuing to show up, and being, when you're told, hey, what you're thinking about this, that's wrong. Okay, why is it wrong? Teach me. Telling me that I don't understand, I can't understand anything he's gone through because he doesn't look like me, that discounts everything. He comes to my home and I love him. And that won't fill every gap, that won't make every hurt go away. But if I'm showing up and I'm able to say, okay, I'm here, I want to learn. I want to have people who love him, and have people he can look at and ask questions that he may not feel comfortable asking me. He has 2 moms. He's a teenager. There's some questions he's not comfortable asking me and his other mom.
That part.
He called up my dad one day to ask some puberty questions. I wasn't ready for all that. But just having a community that is able to show up, that, okay, if this kid has a question about this thing, I may not be able to answer it, but I know this person will.
But you just spoke to what it looks like to be an individual in a community, though, right? There are certain demographics of yourself, that's how you present, that you can't speak to, but your father can.
Yes,
does that make sense?
exactly.
So yes, the community you have created around him loves him and cares for him. But from an individual standpoint, I need to talk to a man.
Exactly.
I need to talk to a black man. I need to talk to see what I'm saying? Yeah. So there's still some space for individualism in the community.
And
We
when
just
that
gotta
child came to my
parse
home,
it
I
out.
didn't have the not immediate phone call for a barber, but by God, I have some now.
Yeah.
There you go.
And that's just because I took that time to say, okay, this is not an area that I know things about, but I have to, because this kid is a kid I love, and he's here forever.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do the best I can to keep him safe and loved, and so he's around people that look like him and can talk to him about things that I may not understand. And I can talk to him about things that he may not understand, and that's totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the important thing in closing is knowing, in creating space, that folks, even if we have to go and find the resources, but being a vault and a toolbox of resources for young people to be able to go. I want to say that just in closing, thank you to Reverend Tracy, thank you to Maddie as well for sharing your gift, particularly on the power of love, the power of joy, and sacred affirmation. And I just want to remind each and every one of us, when we talk about healing from past trauma, past hurt, healing is holistic. Let me say that again. Healing is holistic. The mind, the body, and the spirit. So again, we want to just encourage education. I invite and encourage you all that resources are available. This is the second mental health panel that we've had. And so if something hits home for you, we have resources, which are places, the place of refuge. The church, folks ought to be able to go to the church and find the resources that they need. So again, to you both, great big God bless you. Thank you so much for just your time and your talent. If you will, for those that are watching and in this space, if you will just share your social media handles so folks can find you, can whatever resources they may need. Maddie, they might need a black barber over in Madison, Indiana, okay?
That part. Shout 'em out.
You can find me on Facebook at Madeline Stacer Miller. It's Stacer Miller's hyphenated, STASER hyphen Miller. And I also work for DCS in Scott County, if you got any DCS questions.
You can find me on social media, name Tracy Simmons. I'm also a licensed therapist at Life Journeys Counseling. You can look that up online. I am a marriage and family therapist associate on my way to my licensure. Other social medias are all attached to wherever I am on Facebook. So, yeah, please, if you need any support, please do not hesitate to reach out.
Amen. Those of you that are watching, God bless you. Set some stuff on fire. Come on, can you just celebrate just our two panelists today?